Betsy and Thomas here for the American Intelligence Media. Wow, do we have a blockbuster for everybody. And I'm telling you, this audio might take a little time to explain to everyone what we want to share with you. So if you look at the ticker and you see too much time at hand that you don't have to listen to us, save it and listen to it when you can. Thomas, what is so explosive that everybody here needs to know?
Well, Betsy, as we had mentioned before in previous conversations, we've been working on a projection of what the future is going to look like on the internet. But to do so, we had to look at the past of the internet, how it came to exist, and also how it is that it has become militarized, why everyone now knows that the CIA works with Amazon.com. Everyone knows that the NSA and the CIA are basically using Facebook as a social network experimentation on how to manipulate people. But what people don't know is how all of that came to be.
Now, we have posted a few articles on the American Intelligence Media about the topic that you are going to discuss, and I'll have the links right below, but it was only of late that you've been able to put together the whole picture of what's really going on.
Well, yes, that was because the conversation that we had led some people to contact you, and then they contacted us, and then we've had continuing conversations with some of the individuals involved with these very, very profound thefts of patents that have turned into social media, as well as just revealing what we had in previous articles, that Leader Technology was this company that had their patent stolen basically before it could even be filed by their own patent attorney, a very famous person who is mentioned in the article. So what we wanted to do was try to let people know what is really going on and where things are going, because we oftentimes predict things for the future. And what we're about to tell you today, we have mentioned repeatedly in previous conversations, but we never got very specific about it. So we got very specific in our last conversation, I believe it was, and that seemed to have gone worldwide, and a lot of people then contacted you, and we have now had all kinds of contacts with interesting people who are part of this scenario, part of this story. But really what it is it's about the fact that what we take for granted as our technology, we believe is for entertainment and to help us and to make our lives better and easier so we have more leisure time. But that's not what it was created for at all. As a matter of fact, I was involved in those things all the way back into the 70s. And I saw it as it was developing. Most people don't realize the story that I'm going to tell you now. And when you do realize it, it's a bit of a shock because you realize that you're part of an experiment. And what most people do is they get very upset when they hear this.
And before you go into that, I tell you for me what the main subject here is, because I was an entrepreneur for many years, is that we trust the government, the U.S. Patent Office, to hold our private property rights in high regard. But what if you are an entrepreneur, a creator, an innovator, and you take your idea to the patent office and to attorneys you think you can trust, and they've got a whole machine operating up there where they subvert, steal, or keep you from using your device. I mean, Thomas, there are free energy devices out there that could be used here and now that would supplant oil and gas, but it is our research that shows that the patent office suppresses this on purpose to turn around and give it to the military-industrial complex that turns around and weaponizes these things against us. So that's what I'm fuming about.
That's exactly what people get upset about. Because when you find out that right now, actively, 5,000 patents have been confiscated by inventors who turned them in with absolute innocence and naivety, thinking that, the government would protect them, as you just said. But what happens is a committee reviews every single patent that is submitted. That committee has on it individuals from some groups we're going to talk about. I'll name them now. Highland Forums, patent attorneys, U.S. patent attorneys, very powerful ones who are connected to Silicon Valley and all of the military-industrial complex, as you mentioned. Members of DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, the Department of Defense's research and development wing, which is incredibly powerful and spends tremendous amounts of money, which no one can even figure out where it comes from. And then In-Q-Tel, which is the CIA's version of that, which has a group called Science Applications International Corporation, which both In-Q-Tel and SAIC, which has now been turned into LIDOS, those groups get money directly from taxpayers. They're given to venture capital corporations that are private, and then they drive innovation in America. All innovation in America that comes from patents is driven by the Patent Office, which, as I just pointed out, the committee that reviews all patents is almost all military. And when they see a patent that they like or want, they simply say, for national security purposes, we confiscate this patent.
So for all the entrepreneurs out there that spent thousands, if not millions of dollars developing projects, it can easily be stolen. Stolen by the government to be used as weapons against us.
Legally stolen. There are provisions in the U.S. Code that say that they can not only take that and keep it for an indeterminate amount of time, then there's right underneath it the punishment that will happen to you if you even speak of it. Once you turn your patent in and they confiscate it, you are not allowed to speak about it. If you speak about it, you can be put in jail for 20 years, charged incredible amounts of money, or even longer terms. If you try to make a prototype, same thing. If you try to create it under a different guise, same thing. If you try to submit another patent which is similar, same exact thing. You are put in prison. And don't forget, in our article that talked about free energy and talked about the patent theft, we listed the people who have been killed because their patents were turned in, they tried to continue, and they were killed. And this is no exaggeration. This is not a conspiracy theory.
And so from all of that, we wanted to find a particular case study that we could look at and say that has occurred, because the stories are suppressed, or you really can't get to the inventor, or even if you could, that they won't talk to you. So we found a particular case study where all of these elements exist, and now you're going to tell us about that.
Well, that would be Leader Technology in Ohio developed what basically was the patent for social networking, which was a huge advancement in terms of the capacities for the internet to actually become weaponized for the military to be used as social manipulation, social control, and to basically use all of the weapons that they have to beta test them on Americans, which is now legal, which we point out in the article, which we say all the time. And by the way, as far as I know, we were one of the first groups of people ever to say this, that in 2012, that Obama changed the National Defense Authorization Act to add the fact that Americans could be considered terrorists, war actors, and that cyber warfare could be used against us. Propaganda can be used against us, and the Department of Defense can now be completely active within the domestic borders of America. That is unconstitutional, it is illegal, and it is unethical, and it is what has led us into the mess of complete surveillance of Americans. And in this article that we recently released, which you so beautifully with your team released yesterday, an entire dedicated intelligence report release, in between your two Truth News headlines for morning and evening, you produce this. And it's an amazing compilation, because there's 4 or 5 articles that you can connect to the URLs that we've written about before to give you all the information you want, because as you know, we make sure to really document what it is that we're saying so that you can do the research yourself. Plus we present the research for you so you can draw your own conclusions. So
let's get back to Leader Technology and what was stolen from them and how it harms not only Leader Technologies but all citizens of the world.
Well, with Leader, that was basic theft. That was basic industrial espionage.
How did it work, Thomas?
Well, patent attorneys are some of the crookedest people in the world. They're also some of the richest people in the world because they oftentimes steal the patents. If you give your patent to a patent attorney, you better be able to trust them, because really, they can steal it.
Well, you better take an attorney with you to go to the patent attorney.
Basically, plus you better have signed documents, plus you better have all kinds of things built into it, especially if it's modern day patents that have source code in them. And this is what happened with Leader Technology. They developed the next it's not even the next step. It was the next leap, the next quantum leap in technology. And they trusted one of the best attorneys, top attorneys in D.C., Washington, D.C., top patent attorneys. I don't really want to go into defaming him until I get all my facts together. And then I'm going to attempt with our next article. We're going to write 2 or 3 articles on this topic. We hope to show this person to be who he is, one of the most corrupt people in America and maybe the world. This is the person who wrote the Espionage Act to cover his bases for being someone working in espionage. He wrote some of the patent laws. He was connected with the presidents. He worked in the White House. He was in the National Security Council. And he was connected to Larry Summers when he was at Harvard University, after he stole the basic prototype of this patent from Leader Technology, he gave it to Harvard University, where, of course, Mark Zuckerberg was. And Larry Summers was there too. So the faculty and some of the students took this, but it wasn't a finished program. And so the reason it can be demonstrated that Mark Zuckerberg specifically took this stolen, should we say, maybe I should, allegedly stolen, okay, I'm going to say it once, allegedly stolen source code that had already been linked up to the Department of Defense's encryption codes, which you must be able to do anytime you work with the Department of Defense. And you might ask, oh, well, why would social networking advancements be linked up to the Department of Defense? Well, as I said before, the NSA and the CIA basically run Facebook. That's pretty well known now. And if you don't know that, you haven't read Vault 7, you haven't read WikiLeaks, you haven't really looked into the history of it. But at Harvard, IBM Eclipse Foundation was founded at about the time that this source code from Leader Technology was taken. So they founded a group that then became basically the core think tank for what we would say is the modern advancements in Silicon Valley, and especially for the huge tech moguls, the huge tech barons, who are really stooges, who I will explain that in a minute. But in this case, it is not that. It is not patent theft per se, or patent confiscation for national security purposes. It is basically what happens in industrial espionage. He got bamboozled.
He got bamboozled. A slick attorney. He's a naive. I don't want to call him naive, but in the ways of law and patent, somebody who doesn't know his way around Washington, and he goes in there and he tricks him in giving these source codes to another group, and then because of that, then it doesn't have a patent. So now all the vultures can come in and grab it. But couldn't that be easily proven by looking at the source codes that are in this?
Yes.
You could trail it, couldn't you, Thomas?
Not only that, Leader Technology has the signed documents that show that this patent attorney has signed, demonstrating that he certainly did have it. And it's pretty easy to look at the beginning stages of Mark Zuckerberg's attempt. First off, let's frame this. Mark Zuckerberg stole the program. He hacked into the Harvard computer, and he admits this, and stole the program so he could work with it. Now, there were 4 other students who were given the program, and later, at least 2 of them, I think there were 2 lawsuits, and 3 of them in 2 lawsuits sued Zuckerberg saying that he had stolen this code and had actually taken their advancements in the couple years that it took, actually 3 or 4 years that it took, for them to work out the bugs and take it the next step and go from one type of database management to another type of database management. The first one had limitations by the technology that was available at that time. The second one was able to work around that. Mark Zuckerberg and the other 4 students and the faculty at Harvard, including the chancellor, Mark Summers, who, if you don't know who he was the Secretary of Treasury under the Clintons, and he's one of the most corrupt people. He went into China and Russia and ripped them off. He got Harvard sued for tens of millions of dollars for those activities, and Harvard had to pay. So Larry Summers was corrupt, and while he was there, he's handling this corrupt direction of the advancement of social networking on the internet with an absolutely miraculous step in advancement. And it's not just a step, It's absolutely novel, and it is not accidental.
Well, and there's could be a lot said about that. We'll save that because I think you might be interviewing someone from Leader Technology about those details. But let's just say that they were able to come up with a technology that allowed Facebook and others like it to have scalability at enormous proportions.
And to work out of the old files, filing system, where you actually have a file and you work around the file, and you work in the file, really. You're kind of limited by the parameters of the file. This technology, this should have been patented, this huge advancement was almost incomprehensible, even for people who are fairly well versed in computer science. Because what happened was the file, let's take your thread. Take your thread on Facebook. Somehow it's a file that's interactive in real time and can have 1 million people adding to it. So when it got to that level of scalability, which is basically infinity, no one could handle it. No systems could handle it until very special code was written. And this code is basically the code that has led to not only Facebook, Twitter.
Google uses it.
Well, I'll go back and explain Google in a second. But all social networking comes out of this source code, and this should have been patent for Leader Technology. And so when you say things are stolen, well, things get stolen all the time. I had a friend.
Well, wait a minute. Before you go to talk about the friend, if this technology is so amazing and it's Facebook's, then wouldn't we see Facebook patenting it?
That's what I'm going to study next. I doubt that Facebook has a valid patent. But if they do, it's going to be basically the same exact source code with the additions, as well as if it has to be integratable with the Department of Defense encryption code so they can have their backdoor, as well as it must be linked to a search engine that has already been pre-approved by the NSA, because every Google, Yahoo, Dogpile, any search you do on the internet is an NSA search. The very base code that was written for that, the source code that was written for that, was put into open source, and Brin and Page were working at a university being paid by the United States government and taxpayer dollars, and they came up with a couple novel ways of coding pages, and then they took an existing system that they were building on called Memex, which the DARPA had already developed. And Memex is basically the program that everyone must build on, that is approved by the United States government to actually have these programs. You are not going to be approved or get approved as a social networking system unless you're in the club. And that, we now call it Silicon Valley Club, but before it was called the IBM Eclipse Foundation. If you're not in that club, you're not going to get government approval, because you're not putting the Department of Defense encryption codes in, and you're not putting in the search engine called Memex, which was then transformed into Google.
Okay, back to your friend.
Industrial espionage kills people probably every day of the year. People invent things. For instance, there are many, many Nikola Tesla patents that no one has put into application. A patent doesn't say how you're going to invent it. It shows a novel step that is absolutely unique. And it's so unique that that you can't take a patent necessarily and make the machine it is describing. And that is particularly true with John Worrell Keely's patents and Nikola Tesla's patents, two men who will continue to be the innovators in the future. So a friend of mine, one of the most brilliant engineers I know, worked with some people who said, oh, let's take this patent. And it was a patent for that you hang it on your window and it spins. But the vortexes inside take cold air from the outside and turn it into hot air on the inside. But if you turn the device around, it does the opposite. It takes whatever I said, it makes the opposite. So it's an air conditioner and a heater. And all it is a triple vortex machine built upon the vortex idea of Tesla. This guy built it. He made the prototype. He didn't have to file the patent. What happened? Somebody came in, industrial espionage, offered him a lot of money. He didn't take it. Of course, it was stolen the next day, and his laboratory was burnt down. So he started on another one that was a grinder, was a vortex grinder. When he got it done,
by this time they're watching this guy because he's got all this innovation. You see, that's the thing that's the thing about these criminals in Washington. They have no creative thinking. They couldn't do jack you know what
That's right.
if it wasn't for the creation and the innovation of Americans.
The day after the prototype was done and he tested it, they came, took it, burnt down his laboratory again and his house. Fortunately, he got out and he was saved, but everything, all of his money was gone. We now know, and we point out in the free energy article that you have posted, that what you want to do when you have an idea is never let the U.S. government patent office know about it. You go to a foreign country, oftentimes Japan or Germany, you develop it. First off, you patent it, then you go and hide, and then you develop the prototype. And then before you let anybody see the prototype, you have to have your money for marketing and distribution, and you make sure that you are making it in multiple places. So everything is decentralized and that you are not the only person who has this information. So before anyone sees this prototype, it must be already made into a sellable device. And when you see the free energy devices that we have shown you, can, in fact, as Betsy has said, change the entire economy of the world overnight. Those were done that way. That's why cars run on water are common in Japan and Germany. Now in America, they're going for hydrogen cells instead of simply jumping to hydrogen. You can put water in your car right now. And change your own engine over into a water-running engine with GEET technology, GEET. That's all in the energy article.
Yeah, and thanks to the people that created this GEET technology that contacted us, we were able to write this incredible citizen intelligence report, which is in the article. But let's go back now to leader technology and what happened.
Well, that was theft. That was basically... When you speak to the people that, let's say, some of the leaders of leader technology, they will tell you that if they wrote out their story of this, which has been going on for many years, they would have to title it Screwed. They got screwed.
But they didn't understand the fuller picture, from what I understand, until they started reading articles about the Highlands Forum. So what is the Highlands Forum and how did they come to play into this?
Well, that's exactly right. But if you had one of the top U.S. patent attorneys and supposedly one of the most respected U.S. patent attorneys, would you really imagine that he would do this?
Well, no, you wouldn't.
But people didn't know that he worked with a group called Highlands Forum. Now, let me first off go back. I'm going to have to tell the story of the Internet, okay? The Internet was created from monies coming from the Department of Defense, the U.S. government, U.S. taxpayers, and it went to universities. That's still where our research and development goes. It goes to universities where young hotshots, innovative thinkers are creating novel ideas. They're being told what the government wants, what the Department of Defense and the CIA wants, and they're being told, go out there and develop this. Now, the universities keep the patents, or the Department of Defense keep the patents, because when that happens, the student who creates it then might be used as a stooge to create a dummy company, which then magically gets Goldman Sachs funding, which is, of course, CIA funding, or other very large banks or other companies, which are really also CIA companies. Or now the CIA created In-Q-Tel, which is a venture capital company, which is a corporation. So now they have a company which they play like is not CIA run, but it works for the CIA and it handles all CIA cyber innovation. Particularly, they're focused on cyber innovation in cyber warfare. But to begin with, it started off very humbly with 2 universities and a couple of people sending a simple message in a system, and that became what was then called ARPANET. DARPA funded it, so they called it ARPANET. And it went on and limped along because they couldn't really do too much and they could only have a few people connected to it. And then somebody at Stanford, I could go into their names, but it doesn't matter. 2 people at Stanford came up with something called, basically, Stanford University. And these 2 people, again, stole what should have been a patent, but because it wasn't a patent, you can steal all this information, and that's what happened to later technology. They didn't steal a patent. They stole the project as it was from Stanford and turned it into what we call routers. If you don't have a router, you can't have an internet. So the routers were created, and then they started being able to have more people on them. Well, these two guys went off and created a company themselves that was, again, magically funded by Wall Street and big bankers, CIA, and they got infinite money to develop routers. Well, a couple years after that, they mysteriously and suspiciously died. And two other stooges who literally didn't know anything were put in their place, and that company became Cisco Systems, which in the year 2000, was the largest corporation in the world and bragged all over the television that every single internet exchange goes across Cisco Systems routers, and that was a fact. As well as every single thing that went across the internet went through the Cisco routers that had an NSA backdoor in it. This was found out during the Obama administration and became very public, and a war was started between the NSA and the CIA and FBI, and the three of them have been fighting ever since because NSA collects the data. But now, as you notice, right before Obama left office, he said all 17 agencies can now access the raw metadata of NSA. NSA collects every single telephone call, every word that you speak, every keystroke, every television show you watch, and all the information they're collecting, all is collected and is available in a metadata system for a short period of time. You simply use a thing called X key score, and you simply put in a query and you can get any information you want. That is because Cisco Systems allows all routers to be spied on from the beginning, because the Cisco routers were all funded and directed by the NSA. The NSA, DARPA works for the Department of Defense, NSA, FBI. In-Q-Tel works for CIA and National Counterterrorism Center and basically the other 17 intelligence agencies are all spies, from the Treasury Department to geolocation to the National Geospatial Society. All of these things are all running through Cisco routers. Now there are other routers. So Cisco doesn't own the internet. But when people say no one owns the internet, that is the biggest piece of propaganda ever put out. The United States government has always owned the internet, period. Now, we gave away our ability to assign IP addresses recently during the Obama administration through
ICANN, going over to the UN.
To ICANN through Stephen Crocker. Stephen Crocker was on the committee that worked with stealing these patents.
And why is Stephen Crocker important to know?
Because he has the kill switch
so
for the internet.
You're saying that there is a man,
yes,
Stephen Crocker, get that, Patriots, who has the kill switch to the internet.
If you turned off the internet and left it off permanently, that would be basically equivalent to our economy, the world economy, as a full-scale World War III.
Well, yes, it's mass destruction at all kinds of levels.
All economies using the internet, and anyone who has internet accessibility has now become dependent upon it with business, would collapse overnight. So we make it look like, we don't control the internet in America. We can't ferret out Islamic fascists. We can't get the terrorists. We can't stop these people. We can't stop radicalization. We can't stop the KKK. We can't stop Antifa. We can't stop all these evil...
They're never going to stop
that. That is a lie.
They're never going to stop that until they have all of our guns.
Anonymous came on and in one day warned the U.S. government to either close down the radical Islamic terrorist sites, or they would. They gave them a little bit of time. They didn't. They closed down 10,000 sites in one day. You can close down all those sites. And we put in the article all the different NSA, CIA, FBI programs that in some cases they do have patents that they have used to do all of these things. And so what they've done is the internet, it's a lie. It's always been used for weaponization and militarization. So when they found out that they could extend the internet and that many people could communicate on it, they extended it to all the universities. And then a weird thing happened. The ARPANET in America started to expand and become a system for gathering information for weather and other such things. And they said, well, this is very good. And then it started to go overseas. And they found that once the NSA could create scrubbing stations, that they could take all of the cables going across the Atlantic, optical and otherwise, fiber optical and otherwise, and they could run them through a system, and they could scrub it all. And you can read all about that in the article. And so magically, Betsy, because I know you get really upset about this, CERN, the Hadron Collider in Switzerland, in Geneva, Switzerland, it has a collider there, but they say they have 3. They don't have the other 2. That is a CIA collection center. CERN is fake. And the data that they produced is fake. And the Higgs boson particle, all that data has been proven to be fake. So what is CERN? CERN was a collection center for the CIA. And so the NSA said, well, let's just go ahead and open up our experiment of the internet to anyone who can establish a website. So as you know the story, a guy who happened to be working on particle physics discovers the World Wide Web. Overnight, writes a program, which is the basic program that everyone has to use. So you know it had to be DARPA, the Department of Defense, NASA, National Security Agency, NSA. You know it had to be them who wrote the program. So this guy gets the credit for it, which is a complete joke. And he creates the World Wide Web so that anyone who wants to set up their own web page can now be on a militarized ARPANET, which is completely controlled by the Department of Defense. Now, why would any of our enemies or foreign countries want to do that when they know, and anyone knows that studied the history of this, that this is the way that it went? Why would they want to get on there? Well, they did anyway because it became the system. And so when, to tell a little sideline story, sorry, I'm going to go out in the weeds for a second. When the CIA's banks in Switzerland were caught doing all their dirty deals, HSBC, and the feds went in and stopped the offshore tax haven of Switzerland with numbered accounts, the CIA got very, very angry at the NSA for allowing that information to be given to the Treasury Department, because the Treasury Department didn't like it that the CIA has so much gold that they stole after World War II that they're actually competing with the Treasury. And now they're going to have this World Wide Web is going to become a trap. It's a trap for businesses. It's a trap for those who go on there for entertainment. It's a trap for anyone who goes on to the internet unconsciously. And anyone who goes into social networking, that's a trap times 1 million, or perhaps infinity. It's a trap, and we're going to explain how the trap can't get you if you're conscious. But as a sideline, so ARPANET became the World Wide Web, and every single router that was connected to the World Wide Web was, of course, run by Cisco, and Cisco is a U.S. Department of Defense supported and CIA supported dummy organizations. So let's name the dummy organizations. You got Cisco Systems. Then you have Google. Google was the same thing. They took Memex, which the government had used for spying on people and doing Google searches to look up the evil people who were on their ARPANET. And then they said, hey, let's give this to everybody. And then when they start searching bad stuff, we get a red flag, and we can actually create a profile on them and the profile who they're talking to, and we can track all the criminals. So that's what they did.
And then they became the criminals.
Oh.
And the dark web and all the pedophilia and the human trafficking.
You nailed it, Betsy.
Because Betsy likes to nail it. I know you like to go out in the weeds, but I like to tell them how it is.
You nailed it. The internet's, for years, its number one use, pedophilia, created by Yep, you got it. The FBI and the CIA. Now you'd ask, wait a second. And then the second most common use was gambling. So they were going after gamblers, corruption, but they weren't going after pedophilias. They became the pedophilia sites.
Because they use this as blackmail over everyone that has control over these different systems.
It was entrapment.
Yes.
Let me name one case. They found out that hundreds and hundreds of people at the State Department, which has thousands of people working there, were caught in an entrapment scheme with the FBI on a child porn site on the dark web. None of them were prosecuted. Why? That's now in their file. They can be blackmailed. Now the FBI can control them. That's the way it works. The FBI created the dark web. The dark web is completely open to the NSA. They created it.
Well, and I'm sorry to go off on that sideline. I just want folks to see that it's all related. All of this is related to each other.
Absolutely. So when you see the military progression of the internet turning into what we now have as Google and then as social networks and like Twitter, you get a Trump who uses Twitter for Twitter bombs. He uses it against them, and he now is using a social media network that was a stolen patent to bring down the mainstream media. He's going to end, as they say, cut your cord. Don't watch television. Don't watch any cable. Use your computer, use Wi-Fi, and go on and get your news.
Hey, you should go to Truth News Headlines. We've got great headlines every day. In fact, if you look at all the great videos and read the articles, you won't even have time for mainstream media.
That is a fact, Betsy. I can't keep up. The reason I don't write more articles is I'm reading the news that you and your team put together.
And I always say, just skip it. Just read the headline. And you go, no, I got to read it.
And then I come over here and you say, well, what are you working on? And I very reluctantly tell you, and then you say, well, let's do an audio on it. And then, by the way, will you have that article by the end of the day?
Well, I'm sorry, but let me tell you why my sense of urgency. I have 7 children. I think you have 7 children too. Mm-hmm. And I look at these children, and they range from young teens to up to adults, and they are so glued to their devices and to the propaganda that's out there. They are not going to be able to be the generation that defeats us. It defeats this enemy. Thomas, it's you and me and all of the baby boomers out there and the people that are awake. It's up to us. We cannot kick the can down the road anymore. And frankly, the way I look at it, this is a battlefield. And our enemies are using a type of weapon that you might not think is a weapon. It's called information. And they're using these weapons and they're using this technology against us. Now, folks, we got to go grab these weapons they are using at us. We got to turn those things around and we need to fire the hell out of them.
DARPA and In-Q-Tel direct, as I've said before today, all innovation in America through the Patent Office. So DARPA and In-Q-Tel, they now simply put out a list of what it is that they want to make in terms of weapons. Companies then compete to make it. They give them money sometimes, but they compete to do a white paper on it. If you win the white paper, or you even can create a pseudo prototype, and you get the contract, then your company is now going to get billions of dollars. Not only that, you're going to get billions of dollars to build anything you want. So when they do this with DARPA and In-Q-Tel through the Highlands Forum, which is run by a guy they call Yoda, a 95-year-old.
Is he still alive?
He's 95 years old. He just met with Bannon.
What, does he and Kissinger get together? I mean, these 2 old guys, they got an old guy club up there to try to destroy America?
Well, remember Steve Bannon's first big meeting was first with Kissinger, second with Andrew Marshall, Yoda, the man who runs Highlands Forum.
I put that on Truth News Headlines.
Who directs DARPA and who directs In-Q-Tel in a secret fashion, who doesn't even let anything be written down. He's a one-man warlord. He's basically... you could see him as the Darth Vader of our age, but you have to see Kissinger as the evil emperor of our age. He creates the war culture in between all the countries in the world through the Council on Foreign Relations, which still, up until the time of Trump, ran the White House and ran our foreign relations policy. And then Andrew Marshall sits around with these crazy people and says, okay, what is the new weapon that we need? What is the new control device? What is a faster missile? What can we do with creating neutron bombs instead of just, atomic, hydrogen, cobalt, nickel? No, let's create neutron bombs that just incinerate the people and leave the building standing. These are all his devices. This all came from one man, Andrew Marshall, probably the most evil man in modern history.
But what you're saying is that they are getting this from American innovators.
They steal patents. They sit around and they say, hey, look at this patent. This guy just showed us how you can do subliminal silent control by having the television pulse certain frequencies at someone which they won't notice because it will be sent into an extremely low frequency range. So they sit around, oh, that's good. Yeah, let's fund that. Oh, let's fund something that can mind control people. Let's fund something that is...
let's give them an iPhone 8 that has facial recognition. Oh, won't everybody like that? Hey, people, you're funding your own demise if you buy this stuff.
So that's where it goes now. It isn't... they create companies all the time. They also created companies like McAfee and In-Tel and... many of the virus protection companies, those were CIA agents in the original company that McAfee and then later in McAfee was Dmitry Alperovich, Ashar Aziz of FireEye and of CrowdStrike. I mean, these people are the criminals, the cyber criminals of our age, are all CIA indoctrinated and or CIA companies. We have to see that the CIA does this because it trumps even the excuse to steal a patent. You know that the CIA can come in and trump DARPA and say, sorry, we're taking the patent because this is international security, which trumps national security. And hang on, Betsy. And then another group can come in, and you know who they are. Another group comes in, and remember, when you're talking about the CIA had a group that was their counterintelligence group that controlled all the intelligence agencies until the National Counterterrorism Center was set up. And that's run by a person who is so evil. He and Andrew Marshall are good buddies. His name is Nick.
No names. We've got them in our article.
They're in the article. So what you want to do is you want to just follow the money. Yeah. And when you follow the money, you'll see it is so astoundingly corrupt that you will become very upset about it. Now, here's a shocking piece of news. Someone who is at the very top of all of this, from Leaders Technology, read an article that we did recently and some time ago, and he found out about Highlands Forum. He didn't know who the real enemy was that this patent attorney
was working for,
and all these people I'm discussing were all working for. And so when he found out about this, he goes, oh my gosh, here's the missing piece to the puzzle. Well, he was talking to a U.S. congressman's legal representative.
Just recently, right?
Who didn't even know that In-Q-Tel existed.
Can you believe that? A congressman doesn't even know what In-Q-Tel is? But let me ask you now. Is there a Robert Mueller connection to any of this?
He was connected with them too, along with John Podesta.
Oh, no.
Stephen Crocker, all of them. They all know the inside story because Silicon Valley are fake tech moguls who are simply military expansion into the corporate world. And there's a reason for it. Now we're going to get to the scary part of this. And I think this is the reason that our previous conversation went worldwide, was about what I'm about to tell you. Because as far as I know, I have now looked for the very articles and the places and the videos where I heard Eric Schmidt say this, and they're all gone. Well, of course, because they're on the internet. And of course, Google now has 26 subsidiaries, but they say they have a mother company. Now, the mother company is called Alphabet, but it came after Google already had 26 subsidiaries and is one of the largest companies in the world and has infinite money to buy up any of their competition.
They probably had that company on shelf for a while. They didn't just come up with it. We just found out about it.
Alphabet was the plan probably from the Highland Forums.
It's their language. The alphabet is the language of this technology group.
Now, what do they do with all drugs? They give you the first one free.
Oh, yeah.
They get you hooked. They give you a few for free. Then you're hooked. Same thing with the internet. They tell you that, you have to have an internet service provider, except now you can actually do it otherwise. But let's just say everybody has to have an internet service provider, so we pay a little bit of money, right? Well, they actually pay the government, and then all those cables that they use, they have to pay for, plus the government controls all those cables. So there's no such thing as thinking that the internet service provider is the only connection, and that the routers... See, what people don't understand is they lie to you. They say the internet is all the computers connected. Lie, lie, lie. That is the biggest lie they could tell. Every single communication on the internet, every broadcast goes through a router. Those routers are in buildings. We know where those buildings are. We know who owns the routers, Cisco Systems Incorporated. For heaven's sakes, do you think we're idiots? We know who owns the internet. We know you gave us the internet almost for free. We have
using taxpayer money to develop it.
We have 30 stolen patents or intercepted patents for national security concerns that we use every day that we go on the internet for free. Okay, so they gave us this drug for free to get us hooked. They had no idea it would go so big so fast. They had no idea it would go into all the countries that they wanted it to go into so that they could then spy on everybody, including our enemies. They had no idea business would be put on it in such a way. They had no idea banking, economy, the whole friggin' world is on the internet.
Oh,
and
yeah.
They act like it's on your computers and no one can disturb it. That is the biggest lie of all. They can turn off the internet anytime they want.
And now the Pentagon says to be very concerned that there could be a hack of the stock market and it could all come crumbling down. Are you kidding? The Pentagon says this. You're the people that would probably hack it, along with the Central Bank, Federal Reserve, so that you won't take the blame of your terrible fiscal policies over decades that are going to bring this economy to its collapse.
Plus, we predicted it because the head of International Continental Incorporated that owns the stock market said he's probably going to sell the stock market in 2017 because he only makes $1.5 billion off of it. It's not a profitable business for him. So a controlled crash. Well, you see, as you said, the central banks, basically, it is insinuated that the 25% that the stock market has raised, that a third of the stock market is actually, the stock is owned by the central banks and they did it to prop it up. So it needs to crash.
Cash someplace.
It has to crash.
Yes, it has to. And actually, this is going to be a good thing, people, if you're prepared, and you need to get yourself prepared. Because when it crashes, then maybe we could stop funding these rogue agencies, get control of this technology, and bring it back to the ownership of truly we the people.
And remember that there's only one computer that runs the stock market. It'd be easy to have a cyber attack. Remember that the banks are all on the internet. Every one of them is subject to cyber attacks. The IMF, the International Monetary Fund, recently said if one of these 7 banks defaults, world economy is collapsed.
Right, and they were the big ones. It was Chase, Citibank, it was Deutsche Bank. One of them has a problem, they're all going down.
And we know that Deutsche Bank is completely a fraud at this point, and we even had to ship them gold so that they could have a valuation of their bank that would keep them running. They tried to sell their bank. Deutsche Bank is the worst and is, unfortunately, the weak link in the chain.
And we are not fear mongers, but we are trying to get people to take a reality check. This is getting too big not to fail.
Back up everything you do on the internet and understand that this is where it's going. Here's the scary part. The picture of that iPhone on your face like a Borg spider turning you into a machine automaton is the intent of the internet. It always has been. It's the intent of the iPhone. It's the intent of Apple, of Microsoft. They all have backdoors. They all are manipulating you. And when they found out that better than 1984, where the screen was watching you, better. You watch the screen. You give up of your free will, your time, your energy to completely give yourself over to this entertainment device.
Well, wrap it up for us, Thomas, and let folks know what we have in store for future articles and audios.
Eric Schmidt has said that the last 2 presidential elections, he used Google and changed the algorithms so that they would support the Democratic candidate. He says he is going to do that now on a really massive scale in 2018. Now, let me tell you what's happening with Alphabet and why Eric Schmidt took over the company. They intend to now change over all Google to Alphabet. And what they will do is the following. They will simply, at the entire internet and all search engines, will charge you to do a search. But they won't charge you if you stay in your digital box that they're going to create you that has your news feed, your entertainment feed. Everything you're interested in will be automatically fed to you by algorithms that connect you to other things like that. So but they will control, you will think that it's giving you everything. No, it will still control it. So that's what they did with Facebook and Google for the election. And now it, of course, is coming out. And Eric Schmidt said that in the future, when Google turns into Alphabet, it will not be a search engine. It will have already created your life pattern, your pattern of life. It will know all of your finances that they got from Equifax. They'll know
all your friends, where you go for regular appointments, what time you turn the toaster on in the morning.
Everything that you put on the Internet of Things will control you and has netbots already implanted in it that in fact can send you subliminal signals. So at one time, if they wanted to, they could send out to everyone through those bots all kinds of false information that could cause astounding havoc, as well as they can literally change the way you think. They can change your values through these subliminal controls. These are electronic. This isn't images and sounds anymore. This goes right into your body through transcranial magnetic induction and things like that. This is what they intend to do. So you will be in a virtual world. And when you're not in the virtual world with your 3D goggles on, which you'll only have to, move your hands, you won't be touching any screens. Things will be so pre-programmed for you, and it will not be artificial intelligence. That's called machine intelligence. And it isn't intelligence. They're simply subroutines. Again and again, they will limit you. They will create the envelope you can't get out of, the box you can't get out of, and it will provide you with what you think is everything, but they will control everything. And they will not control it just with machines. As they now admit with Facebook, the majority of the people who work for Facebook are not selling ads. They are interacting, calling themselves basically artificial intelligence, but they're not. They're humans who are manipulating you with programs that are pre-created, with memes, when you see on your in Facebook a post and it doesn't let you like it, that is coming from the U.S. government. It's coming from the Global Engagement Center, from the board, Broadcasting Governors, Department of Defense, and they actually admitted this recently when their head guy quit and took later 3 of his top IT people because they were tired of it. And they admitted that that's what they were doing with Facebook. They were using X keystroke to go in, target, and manipulate people. And that's what we do with this system. So when you, in the future, and this was going to happen as soon as Hillary Clinton was elected, because then it would have been total lawlessness and they could have gone ahead with these things without having to even make a pretense like they did with Equifax. It would have
just been a lockdown. That's it. Game over.
You would have been put in your digital prison. You would have been locked in your box and you would have thought you were free. You'd have everything brought to you instantaneously without even Googling. It will even anticipate your next query and provide the answer for you, okay? It will be able to look at your physical body and be your doctor. Doctors will be online. Currency will be online. You will not have physical currency. You will not even need to go to work. They don't even need you as a consumer except to order from Amazon and have it delivered by a drone.
And Amazon is becoming the world's company store. It harkens back to that image at the Grapes of Wrath. Remember that great John Steinbeck novel where the farmers that were, or the immigrants that were harvesting the peaches only had one store to go to buy their goods. And then the store could charge as much as possible, knowing that how much that worker was getting picking peaches.
Once you're a monopoly, like Microsoft, Apple, like Cisco, like Google, like Intel, like all these things that have monopolized these fields, those are all military inventions and innovations and run by the military to this very day. If you think otherwise, you're incorrect. So what do you do to get out of this? You simply don't use Google.
Well, I can't. How am I going to research anything?
You simply don't use Alphabet when it comes out.
How?
Or You use it for the reverse
No,
purposes.
what we need to do is the people of America need to get claim of this and get these thugs out of government that are spying on us and doing this stuff illegally. This could be a great boon to our human evolution if we could get the evil out of it.
You simply manipulate it for what they didn't anticipate you to use it for. They wanted to take your freedoms away. You use it to create freedom by the research, by citizen journalism. You also take up the banner to say and to start approaching politicians and tell everyone, send this article that was written to every politician because they don't even know this stuff exists.
Because if one congressman doesn't know In-Q-Tel is out there, then how many more do?
And
don't.
Right? All of them. Even the ones on the Intelligence Committee. They don't know anything. They don't know that they've already had the largest, in the Congress, in the Select Intelligence Committee, the largest espionage ring that was centered on that committee.
And they're still scratching their butts going, what? Our information was sent to Pakistan? I'm like, you gotta be kidding.
They don't even admit it exists.
They are
They're
absolutely
the ones who created
the most ignorant people in America.
And so what we do is we must demand that all of these government-owned, run, funded organizations, and when they say, In-Q-Tel is a private corporation, it's a venture capital, shut up. It's our money. It's the U.S. taxpayers' money. All of it is, including the military. We need to be able to veto the military. The people need to be able to veto what the White House does in terms of executive power because it's all been so centralized in the president. Thank God we have Trump there, because if Hillary was there, it would have turned into the evil empire. So what we have to do is demand that it become a utility that the U.S. government simply charges as internet service provider.
Like a highway or your gas and water. I don't want to freak people out because when they hear public utility, they think it's going to be another monopoly.
We simply need to turn off all cables leading from America to foreign countries. And then we need to charge them a fortune when we turn back on. And it will be a U.S. utility. And we will charge more than any service provider. Or even if you charge half of a service provider, it doesn't matter. You have 7.7 billion accounts on the internet. Charge them each month to be on the internet $5.
And you know something else,
Thomas? You know how much money that is?
You are always saying that results can be found in lawsuits. This is why we love to follow Judicial Watch. Yeah, Tom Fitton, you're my man out there. Those 5,000 people who had their patents picked up by the U.S. Patent Office, they need to get together with a class action suit because this is fraud on a massive level.
Yes, Larry Klayman and
I know. You like Larry. He's more your age.
Yes, I like Larry. Larry should take this case up because it is the absolute premier case. It is the best case he could take because there's plenty of proof. And the shareholders of this company have been working on this for years. And then you take the money from these new utilities, including Twitter, because these are stolen patents, patent infringement. You simply seize the assets of these companies, turn them into U.S. assets, same thing you should do with the U.S. Federal Reserve, and you audit them, you give them back some recompense, and then you take the money and you give it to the people who had their patents stolen, like Leader Technology, and then you pay them off. If Leader Technology had that patent, he would have made trillions, this is no exaggeration, a couple $1 trillion already. Because if you take all the companies that used it as their base code to build on, that was his patent. They would have had to pay the person who owned the patent.
But not to mention all the free energy creators and innovators out there. So by taking on this case and setting the example with the Facebook case and Leader Technology case, then you're opening the way for everyone else who's been screwed by these corrupt patent attorneys in the U.S. Patent Office.
And you go back to the patents that were taken for purposes of national security, and you pay those people. You go back to the people who were killed, and you give their family some insurance money.
And you arrest them.
Of course you arrest.
And where is the Jeff Sessions? I haven't seen any arrests. Has Hillary been indicted yet? Where is he?
Name a single arrest ever by the FBI for industrial espionage.
Okay, Thomas.
No such thing.
Let's wrap it up.
The FBI protects these corporations, and then they, of course, through the FBI has access to everything the NSA and the CIA have, except for counterterrorism, and they have their own counterterrorism unit. So remember, this all comes down to counterterrorism and counterintelligence. That's a very few people. All we have to do is seize those companies, seize their assets, and then do an
They
inventory
are the
of what
enemy.
they have.
That's what you would do if they were the enemy on the battlefield. You would take their guns and you would use it against them.
Because before you know it, the United States military will own all corporations in America of any real power, and the ones that aren't are then supported by the pharmaceutical companies and big pharma or big oil. So if you take big pharma, big oil, and this type of patent theft and this type of cyber warfare in the information technology war that's going on, you could glean so much money you'd never have to tax another American, and we would again become the great nation that we were before.